Well, good day, everybody, and welcome to the personality edition of 5 Minute Psych. In this 5-minute segment, we'll look at influences on personality, starting with how situational factors and mental events impact how we respond. Then we'll consider how genetics influence our personality before examining personality and the brain. Your personality is your unique constellation of traits that remains stable and influences how you respond. But your responses depend on more than what you have on the inside. They also depend on the situation. Strict behaviorists like Watson and Skinner would even argue that you respond a certain way in a given situation because you received positive consequences for responding that way in the past, either in that situation or a similar situation. This makes it sound like we're just puppets of our environments. You studied not because you're conscientious, but because you've been rewarded for studying in the past. Today, most disagree with the strict behaviorist, seeing situational factors as something that could add to any theory of personality, but not the only thing causing personality. In addition to situational factors, mental events influence how we respond. Things like what we believe to be true and what we expect will happen. For instance, you study in part due to situational factors, because you've been rewarded for it in the past, but also because you expect that studying will pay off again, and because you believe that you can learn the content if you study. Without these beliefs about your studying and your abilities, you wouldn't study, showing that mental events also come into play with how we respond. Many core personality traits are influenced by genetics, and this is studied by comparing the personality traits of people who share different degrees of relatedness. If these traits are genetic, then you'd expect that the more genes someone shares with another, the more similar they'd be to each other in personality. While research finds this to be true, for instance, identical twins who share 100% of their genes with each other are very similar in personality, and this is true whether they grew up together and shared an environment or not. Also, adoptive siblings raised together are no more alike in personality than two random people off the street. All of this suggests that those environmental influences that we share with others, like living in the same house with the same resources and rules, have minimal impact on personality, and that genetics plays a major role. However, it can't just be genetics, because even identical twins are somewhat different in personality. It turns out that although shared environmental experiences contribute little to personality, environmental experiences that are unique to each of us, like the time you went to camp for a week by yourself, can have an influence on personality. Hence, personality seems to come from genetics and also our unique experiences. Some of you may be wondering how something like personality could be inherited, and the answer lies in the brain. After all, our personality comes from our brain, and we inherit a specific brain structure or chemistry that affects how we respond to the world. We can't point to a personality center in the brain, and it looks like networks of areas are involved. But one area that's especially key is the amygdala, which is responsible for making us feel fear. It's possible that some of us have an amygdala that responds faster and longer to stimuli out there in the world, making us more timid, less adventuresome, outgoing, and so on. The chemicals involved in neural communication can also directly impact how we respond, and some of us naturally have more or less of these chemicals, like dopamine and serotonin. Higher levels of dopamine are associated with positive emotions and high energy, while lower levels of dopamine are linked with low energy and anxiety. With serotonin, high levels make us feel lighter and happier, while lower levels make us feel depressed and impulsive. Well, we just looked at influences on our personality, and we began by focusing on how situational and mental factors affect how we respond to the world. And then we explored how personality is influenced by our genes. Finally, we discussed how brain structure and chemistry could influence personality. Now, aren't you glad you had 5 minutes?